The funny thing about James Doakes is that if you watch Dexter once, he feels like the problem. He's loud. He's aggressive. He's always in Dexter's face. He ruins the vibe at Miami Metro. He doesn't play along with the Dexter is just a harmless lab nerd fantasy. And if you watched the show years ago and only remember the big moments, you probably remember Doakes more as a meme than a person.
Surprise, motherfucker!
The human jump scare. The dude who hates our main character for what looks like no good reason. But if you go back and actually rewatch seasons 1 and 2 knowing who Dexter really is, Doc stops feeling like the crazy one. He starts looking like the only normal reaction in a completely insane situation. In a police department where a serial killer is literally standing in the middle of the squad room every day, cracking jokes and doing blood reports, James Doakes is the only person whose brain and conscience both refuse to go to sleep. He's not the unhinged one, he's the only sane man in Dexter. Most fans on a first watch don't see him that way. From Dexter's perspective, Doakes is just this constant obstacle. He shows up in the hallway, in the parking lot, at crime scenes, always glaring, always suspicious. It's easy to read that as jealousy, as ego, as some personal issue he has with Dexter. And then, by the time season 2 ends, he's framed as the Bay Harbor butcher and blown up in a cabin. The story moves on. Dexter survives. Doakes becomes the tragic, intense guy who just got in the way. That's the surface level version. But when you strip away the fact that we're attached to Dexter as the main character, and you just ask, what does this man look like from the outside? The whole thing flips. If you were a cop, and you worked with someone who was eerily calm around mutilated bodies, always at the right place at the right time, strangely vague about where he goes at night, and seems to actually enjoy being around murder scenes, who would you be in that department? Most of Miami Metro shrugs, laughs it off, and enjoys the help. Doakes is the one guy who says, no, something's wrong here. Even his introduction sets that up. From the beginning, Doakes is framed as different from the rest of the squad. He's ex-special forces. He's seen combat. He's not impressed by office politics or by people who play nice. There's this early dynamic where everyone is joking around with Dexter, calling him Blood Guy, letting him be the quirky one. Dexter leans into that. He plays up the awkward charm, the harmless smile, the little jokes about blood spatter. Doakes doesn't laugh. He watches. He notices that Dexter never really reacts to the horror in front of him. While everyone else at a crime scene is at least a little disturbed, Dexter is focused, almost comfortable. For us, as viewers, that's normal. We know he's a killer with a code. For Doakes, that's not just weird, that's a serious red flag. So he does something most people in real life never do. He doesn't fake it. He tells Dexter straight up, I don't like you. Not as a joke, not as teasing, as a flat statement from one predator who feels another, but can't see the shape yet. On a first watch, that just makes him look rude. On a rewatch, it's the first sign that someone in this building still has functioning instincts. As the series goes on, those instincts don't fade, they intensify. Doakes is the only one who can't relax around Dexter. He notices patterns the others ignore. Dexter is always around major cases. Dexter always has a neat explanation. Dexter somehow understands killers a little too well.
Your instincts were dead on. They're always dead on when it comes to killers. Why is that?
There's that moment where the ice truck killer case starts getting personal, and Dexter is more rattled than he should be. Everyone else just moves on. Doakes catches it. He sees Dexter's composure crack and files it away. He starts doing what an actually good cop would do in that situation. He tails Dexter. He watches where he goes. He keeps a mental score of all the strange timings and disappearances. If you imagine the show without Dexter's narration, Doakes is doing the exact thing we would want any competent officer to do if something feels off about a coworker who lives in murder scenes. He doesn't have proof yet, but he has a growing stack of this doesn't add up, and he refuses to pretend otherwise just because everyone else likes the guy. Things escalate when the Bay Harbor butcher case hits. Now the city knows there is a serial killer out there dumping bodies in the ocean. The FBI is involved. The pressure is insane. From Dexter's point of view, this is the season where he's in the most danger of being caught. From the outside, this is also the season where Doakes' sanity becomes a problem for Dexter. Remember the Rodrigo case? Dexter accidentally mishandles the blood report, and a dangerous criminal walks free because of it. Not long after, that same criminal turns up dead on the Bay Harbor butcher's table. To the average cop, that's an unfortunate coincidence. People make mistakes, right? To someone already suspicious of Dexter Morgan, it's not a coincidence at all. It's a mistake that helps a very specific pattern. Doakes puts that together. He's not just annoyed by Dexter anymore, he's connecting him directly to killings that nobody can explain. When Lundy starts narrowing the investigation down, realizing the killer probably has inside knowledge that the dumping ground matches where certain boats dock, Doakes is already ahead emotionally. He doesn't know the details yet, but he knows, in his gut, that Dexter fits in that picture somehow. Eventually, suspicion stops being enough for him. Dox breaks into Dexter's apartment. It's a huge line to cross, but think about the context. He's a cop who believes a coworker might be a serial murderer. He's seen him around crime scenes too often. He's watched him mishandle crucial evidence. When he finds the blood slides, it all clicks. A hidden collection of neatly labeled glass slides, each with a single drop of blood, carefully stored where no one is supposed to find them. To us, that's been part of Dexter's ritual since episode 1. To Dox, it's the confirmation his instincts have been screaming for since day 1. No normal forensic analyst keeps trophies of other people's blood in a secret box. That discovery is the moment where Doc stops being the angry guy who doesn't like Dexter and becomes the person in the show who actually knows, with certainty, what Dexter really is. Not a shady coworker. A killer. What he does with that knowledge is what really separates him from everyone else in the series. Once Dexter gets the upper hand and locks Doakes in that cabin, the roles flip. The man who has been hunting him is now trapped. Dexter has all the power. Dexter could lie. He could fake some story and deny everything. Instead, he does something almost arrogant, he explains himself. He lays out his code, his rules, his justification. He tells Doakes what Harry taught him. He explains that he only kills criminals. He frames himself, the way he always does in his head, as a controlled force, someone who does terrible things, but for a reason. We've heard that speech in different forms all through the show. It's baked into how we relate to Dexter. On some level, we buy it because the narrative is built around him. Dox doesn't buy it, not for a second. He doesn't soften at the idea that Dexter only kills bad people. He doesn't get seduced by the vigilante fantasy. He doesn't try to cut some deal where he keeps quiet if Dexter keeps his kills clean. He calls him what he is, a murderer. And he does the one thing almost no one else in Dexter's life ever truly does. He tells him to stop. Turn yourself in. Face what you are. In that cabin, you see exactly why Doakes is the sane one. He hears the same story the audience hears, and instead of twisting his morals to fit it, he holds his ground. No code, no target selection, no backstory changes the reality that Dexter butchers people on tables and keeps their blood as trophies. Doakes is isolated, injured, and facing death, and he still won't let Dexter's explanation become an excuse. Now compare him to everyone else around Dexter. Deborah loves him so deeply that she can't see him clearly until the truth crushes her. Her reaction is messy and human, but it's not sane in the sense of accurately judging him. Her need for him overwhelms what he actually is. Harry creates the system Dexter lives by, and then kills himself when he realizes what he's turned his son into. That's not stable judgment. That's a man who tried to build a cage around a monster and then couldn't live with the fact that the monster is still there. Rita is kept in the dark entirely. She never gets a real choice. Her trust is based on a lie from day one. Her picture of Dexter is so far removed from reality that she literally cannot have a sane opinion about him. LaGuerta is sharp, but she's constantly balancing politics, reputation, and survival. For most of the series, she doesn't let herself fully interrogate Dexter the way Doakes does. When she finally starts to move in that direction later, she ends up in the same place he did. Dead. Lundy gets closer than almost anyone. He senses that the butcher might be law enforcement. He questions errors in Dexter's work, but he's wrapped in bureaucracy and needs hard proof. His instincts flicker in the right direction, but he never commits the way Doakes does. Dox is the only one whose relationship to Dexter is built entirely on what Dexter actually is, not on what he gives them emotionally or professionally. He doesn't need Dexter to be redeemable. He doesn't need him to be likable. He doesn't need him to be useful. That frees him to see Dexter for what he is, a man who is dangerous and, whether he chooses his victims carefully or not, still fundamentally wrong. There's also his background to consider. Dox isn't some naive rookie who's never seen violence. He's a soldier. He's killed people before under orders. He's seen what actual justified violence looks like, in war zones and in the worst corners of human behavior. That experience means two important things. First, he doesn't flinch from ugly reality. He doesn't need the world to be clean. He can handle the idea that people do terrible things. Second, he knows the difference between violence that haunts you and violence that you enjoy. When he looks at Dexter, he doesn't see someone scarred by what he's had to do. He sees someone eerily at peace with it. Someone who is too comfortable, too precise, too calm. Dexter's relationship to blood is not the relationship of a traumatized soldier or a burnt-out cop. It's closer to a craftsman. Dox recognizes that. He might not put it into poetic language, but he gets it on a gut level. This is not a man who kills because he has to. This is a man who kills because something inside him wants to. That's why he can't let it go. That's why he keeps pushing even when it makes him look obsessive. To him, Dexter is not a quirky coworker. He's a ticking bomb that everyone else has decided to pretend is a paperweight. When Dexter decides to frame Dox for the Bay Harbor butcher killings, the show pulls one of its cruelest moves. Because from the outside, the story Dexter constructs is disturbingly believable. You have a cop with a history of violence, known for losing his temper. You have a man who doesn't get along with others, who already has a reputation for going too far. You have someone who has been loudly accusing the nice guy of being a killer from day one. If you're Miami Metro, which version of reality is easier to accept? That your friendly, helpful blood spatter analyst is a mastermind serial killer who's been outsmarting you for years? Or that the angry, unstable sergeant finally snapped and turned out to be the monster? Framing Doakes works precisely because the world was already halfway to believing that story. He has been coded by everyone around him as the problem. From our perspective, we know he's the one telling the truth. From the perspective of the show's world, he's the perfect fall guy. And that's what makes his death hit so hard when you think about it. The only person who stood firmly in reality, who refused to normalize Dexter, is the one who gets blown up and written off as the villain. The lie wins. The neat narrative wins. The sane man is erased so the city can keep living in denial. There's also a meta layer here that's hard to ignore. The writers needed someone inside Miami Metro who would behave like a real human being faced with someone like Dexter. If no one ever suspected him, the show would feel weightless. There has to be friction, there has to be a risk. That's Doakes. He is the embodiment of the question, what if someone actually saw through all of this? But the writers also needed Dexter to remain free, at least for a while. You can't have the one truly sane, morally grounded person in the story win that conflict too early, or the series ends. So they do the only thing that keeps both forces alive. They let Doakes be right, and then they remove him. Inside the story, it's tragic and brutal. Outside the story, it's the cost of telling Dexter's tale from the killer's point of view. Someone has to pay for the audience's ability to keep rooting for this man. Doakes is that payment. When you look at the show through that lens, the only sane man label stops feeling like a joke and starts feeling like a fair diagnosis. Sanity in Dexter doesn't mean being gentle or easy to be around. It doesn't mean handling everything politely. It means refusing to treat a serial killer as acceptable just because he's convenient. It means not letting your need for comfort override what your eyes and instincts are telling you. Everyone else, in one way or another, bends reality to keep Dexter in their life or in their system. Doakes is the exception. He never bends. He never relaxes around him. He never rewrites Dexter into a hero in his head. He sees a man who enjoys being close to death, who keeps trophies of his victims, who manipulates the people around him to stay hidden, and he never decides that's okay. That's why, after a rewatch, it's hard not to come away with a different kind of respect for James Doakes. Underneath the yelling, the intensity, and the memes, he is the one person whose reaction to Dexter Morgan actually makes sense. He isn't perfect. He isn't calm. He isn't likable all the time. But in a story built around everyone lying to themselves about who Dexter really is, James Doakes is the last man standing who insists on staying in touch with reality.